By having Jose Alvarado as a short roll option, they kept running these small screens at the top of the court. They would then double team Jalen Brunson. He would swing the ball over to Alvarado. And then all of a sudden, you got 4-on-3.
With another point guard.
With another guy who can handle the ball.
The hidden gem of the NBA Finals. And no, I'm not talking about Jalen Brunson. I'm not talking about Wembanyama. I'm not even talking about anybody who started a single game in this series. I'm talking about a 6'4" point guard out of Brooklyn who barely played in the first half of Game 4 of the NBA Finals and walked out of that night as the reason the Knicks are world champions. His name is Jose Alvarado. And by the time this video is over, you're gonna understand exactly why a guy averaging 4.2 points a game in the finals might be the most important role player on this entire championship roster. Let's start with who this guy actually is, because before we get into the finals moment, you need to understand the background that made that moment possible. Jose Alvarado was born in Brooklyn, New York, grew up in Williamsburg, went to Christ the King High School in Queens, one of the most respected basketball pipelines in the entire city. The kind of school that sent players to high majors and the NBA for decades. The kind of gym where toughness gets built into you before you ever play a college minute. Then he went to Georgia Tech, where he became a 4-year letter winner, helped lead the Yellow Jackets to the 2021 ACC Tournament Championship, scored over 1,400 career points, and was named ACC Defensive Player of the Year as a senior. He went undrafted in 2021. Nobody picked him. Not one team in the entire league. 60 selections across 2 rounds, and not a single front office in the NBA was willing to use one of them on a 6-foot guard with a chip on his shoulder the size of Brooklyn itself. He spent time in the G League with the Birmingham Squadron before earning his spot with New Orleans, where he spent the next 5 seasons becoming one of the most disruptive backup point guards in basketball. He won the Rising Stars Challenge MVP in 2023. He picked up the name Grand Theft Alvarado for the way he hunted steals and turned them into highlight reels. For 5 years, he was exactly the kind of player coaches love and casual fans overlook. The guy who comes off the bench and immediately makes the other team's point guard uncomfortable. The guy who dives for loose balls in the regular season like it's Game 7. Respected inside the league, barely known outside of it. Then in February of this year, right at the trade deadline, the Pelicans sent him home. Back to New York. Back to the team he watched as a kid. He told Carmelo Anthony on a podcast before the playoffs even started that if the Knicks won the title, he would be drunk for 8 days and throw a party in every state.
You win?
Oh,
in this city?
Man.
Down on Water Street, Parade of
I'll
Heroes?
be drunk for 8 days.
Then he got serious. He said he'd been waiting his whole life for this opportunity and he had to take advantage of it. That's the setup. Now let's get into the moment that made him a legend in this city. Under 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter against the Spurs, for 3 quarters Alvarado is barely a factor. 3 nondescript minutes in the first half. No points. 2 fouls, one of them from literally wrestling with Victor Wembanyama, a man listed 16 inches taller than him, which prompted one analyst to say that's the type of basketball they play in the cage over in New York. 1 turnover. The Knicks were outscored by 8 points in his limited time on the floor. Then the fourth quarter starts, and Jose Alvarado becomes the most important player on the floor. In 16 minutes, he puts up 8 points, 3 assists, and 2 rebounds. Almost all of it coming during the stretch where the Knicks claw all the way back from a 20-point deficit. He hits a corner 3 that ignites an 8-0 run. He's everywhere, scoring, rebounding, passing, defending. The same energy that made him a nightmare for opposing point guards in New Orleans for 5 years, suddenly showing up on the NBA's biggest stage at the exact moment his team needed it most. The Knicks complete a 29-point comeback, win 107-106, one of the most historic comebacks in finals history. Think about what that moment actually required. Not just talent, Composure. A 28-year-old who'd played 60 seconds of meaningful basketball all night, getting thrown back into the fire of an NBA Finals fourth quarter with his team down 20, and playing like he'd been waiting his whole life for exactly that scenario. Because he had been. After that game, head coach Mike Brown couldn't stop talking about him. Told reporters Alvarado was unbelievable. Said he changed the game. Said his speed and his ability to test the paint were the difference.
Jose was unbelievable tonight. He changed the game. His speed, his ability to touch the paint.
While actor Ben Stiller, sitting in the corner of the media room, was reportedly cheering him on the entire time. And here's what makes this even better. He isn't just some random journeyman who got hot for one night. This guy's from Brooklyn. He grew up rooting for this team. There's a restaurant in Williamsburg, Patricia's, that named a dish after him. Spaghetti and meatballs in a bread bowl. Because he used to eat there before he was ever famous. Now he says there are places in his own city he cannot go to anymore without getting mobbed. That's what this run has turned him into in real time. One Knicks staffer who scouted him 5 years ago at the G League Combine in Chicago admitted he actually hated watching him play because Alvarado kept doing all the little things that frustrate scouts trying to evaluate a guy on paper. Constant havoc, constant disruption, the kind of game that does not show up cleanly in a box score but completely changes how an opponent has to play. That's the kind of player who becomes a hidden gem in a final series. Nobody's building a highlight package around him before the series starts. Nobody has him in their top 3 storylines. And then suddenly, he's the reason a 29-point deficit turns into a championship victory. It's worth thinking about how rare that actually is in a moment this big. The finals usually belongs to stars. Brunson, Wembanyama, the names that get the pre-game hype packages and the post-game headlines. For one night, the entire city of New York needed a kid from Brooklyn who almost nobody outside the league had ever heard of 3 years ago. Now, here's the part that makes the story even more interesting. Because after the Game 4 heroics, the production basically disappears for the rest of the series. In the championship-clinching Game 5, Alvarado goes scoreless. 0 points on 5 missed field goal attempts, 1 rebound in 11 minutes. He struggled to find his rhythm in the biggest game of his career, and it didn't matter one single bit. The Knicks still won 94-90. He still got his ring. Across the entire 5-game finals, Alvarado averaged just 4.2 points and 12 minutes per game. Quiet number. The kind of stat line that gets completely overlooked when people are talking about Jalen Brunson's 45-point masterpiece in the clincher, or Wembanyama's monster performances on the other side, or OG Anunoby's defensive heroics in Game 4. But the plus-minus tells a different story. Across the full playoff run, Alvarado posted a plus 85 in 18 games. That isn't an accident. That's a guy whose impact doesn't always show up on the box score, but consistently shows up in winning basketball. That number matters more than almost anything else in this entire story. Plus 85 across 18 playoff games means that every single time Jose Alvarado stepped onto an NBA court this postseason, his team was significantly better with him out there than without him. Not occasionally, not in flashes, consistently. Across an entire 2 months playoff run against some of the best competition in basketball, he becomes the 4th Georgia Tech alumnus ever to win an NBA championship, joining Chris Bosh, Iman Shumpert, and John Salley. The first Yellow Jacket to do it since 2016. An undrafted kid from Brooklyn who nobody wanted in 2021, who spent 5 years as a steady role player in New Orleans, who got traded back to his hometown mid-season, who barely played in the biggest game of his life for 3 quarters, ends up delivering the single most important 16-minute stretch of the entire finals. Think about the entire arc of that story. Undrafted out of college because teams thought he was too small, too unconventional, too much of a tweener to project into a real NBA role. 5 years of proving exactly the opposite in New Orleans, building a reputation as one of the most disruptive bench guards in the league without ever getting the national spotlight that comes with that kind of impact, then getting traded back home in the middle of a season with no idea that 4 months later he would be the guy head coaches talk about in post-game press conferences after the biggest comeback in recent finals history. That's the biggest gem. Not the box score, not the highlight reel. The fact that on the night the Knicks needed someone to flip the entire energy of Madison Square Garden, it wasn't their franchise star who did it first. It was a local kid who grew up dreaming about exactly this moment and got it.